Welcome back to This is Thailand. Before we start, I want to tell you what this story isn't. There's no bar girl in it, no go-go, no mama-san, no lady drinks, no bank account emptied overnight while he slept. Nobody in this story ever lied to him. Nobody ever asked him for a single baht. I want you to hold on to that because it's going to matter later and because it's the part most people won't believe. His name is Garth Wilkie. He's 57 years old, he's from Sudbury, Ontario, and he spent 26 years working oil rigs. Alberta first, then offshore Newfoundland. 3 weeks on, 1 week off, for a quarter of a century. Big hands, bad knee. The kind of man who fixes what's in front of him and doesn't say much while he's doing it. He came to Thailand for 14 days. He had a return ticket in his bag. That was in 2017. He's still here. And when you ask him why he doesn't just go home, he doesn't say anything about love. And he doesn't say anything about betrayal. He goes quiet for a second, and then he starts talking about arithmetic. That's what's been sitting with me since I first heard it. Not a crime, not a con, just a number and a man staring at it. This one's going to stick with you. Here's his story in his own words. I was a driller. Before that, a derrick hand. And before that, I was the idiot they sent up to do whatever nobody else wanted to do, which is how everybody starts. Alberta first, then offshore out of St. John's, which is a whole different animal. 3 weeks on, 1 week off, 26 years of that. You lose track of what season it is. You come home and your own house smells wrong. But I was good at it. I want to say that plainly because I don't have much left to be proud of, and I'm going to hang on to that one. I was good at it. You put me in front of a problem, a seized bolt, a bad line, something screaming that shouldn't be screaming, and I'd fix it. Hands on the thing. That's how I've always worked. If I can touch it, I can figure it out. Never married. Came close twice. The rigs eat that, you know. You're gone 3 weeks and you come back and she's built a life that doesn't have a hole in it your shape. So it was just me and the money. And there was money. That's the thing people don't get about the rigs. It's not glamorous, it's cold and it's loud and it ruins your hearing and your back. But the money's real. I had a good chunk in my RRSP. That's the Canadian retirement thing. If you're not from there, tax sheltered, you put it away and you don't touch it. I had close to 200,000 in there. Then my mother passed in 2014 and I sold her house in the Donovan. And that was another chunk. I was 56 years old. No, 46, sorry. 46. Christ, I've been here so long the numbers slide around on me. 46 and I had a plan. Work another 5-6 years, come off the rigs, buy a little place on a lake, fish, drink beer, die slow. Now, Donnie Pelletier. I worked with him offshore for about 9 years. And I want to be careful how I say this next bit, because the internet loves a villain, and Donnie isn't one. And if you make him one, you'll miss the whole point of everything I'm about to tell you. We were on deck in weather February, and I went down on the ice, and I went sideways toward the rail, and Donnie got a hand in my collar and put me on my back on the deck like I weighed nothing. He tore something in his shoulder doing it. Never brought it up again. Not once. Not ever. Not even when he was drunk. You understand what I'm saying? On the rigs, you sort men into two piles. The ones you'd want holding the other end of a rope, and everybody else. Donnie was the rope. So in 2015, he sits down across from me at a Tim Hortons on LaSalle, and he's got a folder, and he says he's gotten into something. Private energy fund. Some fella he knew from the Calgary side. Numbers that made sense to a man like me, because it was oil and I knew oil, and that felt like a thing I understood. And he pushes the papers across. I didn't read them. I want to sit with that for a second, because everybody always wants to know why. And the honest answer is, reading them would have been an insult. This is a man who put my life back on the deck with his own shoulder. You don't sit across from him and go through his paperwork line by line like you're checking his math. Where I'm from, that's not caution. That's calling a man a liar in a nice, quiet voice. So I signed most of the RRSP, all of my mother's house, 18 months, and it wasn't a heist. There was no guy on a boat in the Caribbean. There were meetings, and then there were fewer meetings, and then there was a lawyer's letter that used the phrase wound up. And I remember reading that phrase 4 or 5 times because it sounds like something you do to a clock. No fraud, Nothing anybody could charge anybody with. Just structure, just paper. A thing that was legal on every single page and left me with about a fifth of what I'd put in. Here's what I couldn't get past. There was nothing to grab. You put a man like me in front of a fire, I'll fight the fire. You put me in front of a broken thing, I'll pull it apart on the kitchen floor and I'll find it. But this was 100 pages of English words arranged by people who arrange English words for a living, and there was no bolt in it. Nowhere to put my hands. Donnie called. He'd lost more than me, proportionally. He was crying on the phone. I could hear his wife in the background, and I said, "Yeah, no, I know." That's it. That's what I said. He talked for maybe 20 minutes, and I said, "Yeah, and no, I know." And then I said I had to go. I wasn't being cruel. I want that understood. There was nothing to say. He didn't do it to me. I did it to me. He handed me the papers and I chose not to read them because reading them felt rude. Then I sat at my mother's kitchen table for about a year. I'm not being dramatic. That's just what happened. I'd get up, I'd make coffee, I'd sit down, and it'd be dark. I stopped going to the Legion because someone would ask how I was doing, and I'd have to decide whether to lie. In Sudbury, everybody knows. It's not a big place. People are kind about it, which is worse, honestly. I'd rather they laughed. The knee started going. Both hands ached in the cold. I've got frostbite scars across the knuckles from '99, and they wake up every winter, and they don't shut up till May. 55 years old, no job I could go back to, no wife, no kids, and a bank account that looked like a man in his 20s. And then Donnie shows up, still trying to fix it, see? Still trying. He'd been down to Thailand with his brother-in-law, and he sat in my mother's kitchen with a beer he didn't drink, and he said, "Garth, you should go. Just go. It's warm, beer's $2. And then he said the thing that actually did it. He said, "Nobody there asked you what you did for a living." I booked 14 days. I'd never been on a plane I wasn't being paid to be on. That sounds like a line, but it's true. 26 years of flying, and every single flight was a company charter or a company ticket. And there was always a bag of gear in the hold and a man beside me who smelled the same as me. You get on, you sleep, you land, you work. So I'm sitting in Toronto at 4 a.m. with a duffel bag and a paperback I never opened. And I remember thinking, nobody's expecting me anywhere. Nobody's counting on me to be somewhere on Tuesday. And I didn't know if that was freedom or if that was just what it feels like when you're not needed. 14 nights. Guest house booked, off Nimanzoy 9. 1,200 bought a night, which is about $47 Canadian, and a return ticket. I want to be clear about that. I had a return ticket in my bag with a date printed on it, and the date was the 28th of March, 2017. Why Chiang Mai and not the beaches? People always ask. 2 reasons. 1, it was cheaper. Donnie said Pattaya. Donnie always says Pattaya. But I looked at the numbers and Chiang Mai was less for everything. 2, and this is the one I actually believe, I'd had enough water. 26 years and the last 11 of them offshore, sitting on the Grand Banks in February looking at the North Atlantic, and the North Atlantic looking back. I did not want to retire beside an ocean. I didn't want to hear it at night. So I went inland, to a valley in the north with mountains around it, and that was the whole of my planning. The heat hit me on the air bridge. I'm serious. You come out of that plane, and it's like walking into a wet towel somebody's been holding over a stove, and every Canadian I've ever seen do it makes the same face. Half of them hate it. I loved it. God, I loved it immediately. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about spending your life in the cold. It gets into your joints and it stays there. My right knee's been clicking since 2004. And my hands, I've got frostbite scars across the knuckles of both hands. From a winter on a rig outside Fort St. John in '99. And every year from about November, they'd ache like somebody was pressing a thumb into the bone. Every year, since I was 30. 4 days in Chiang Mai, and they stopped. I'm not exaggerating for a story. 4 days. I woke up in that guest house with the fan going and the roosters screaming. There's roosters everywhere in the middle of a city. Nobody can explain it. And I was lying there with my hands on my chest and I realized nothing hurt. I sat on the edge of the bed for a while over that. The first week I just walked. That's all I did. I'd get up early because my body was still on some rig schedule and I'd walk the old city and there'd be monks out at dawn in those orange robes, barefoot collecting food from people kneeling on the pavement and the temple bells going and the smell of charcoal from the mooping carts on the corner. Grilled pork on a stick, 20 baht, sticky rice in a little bag. I ate that for breakfast most mornings for 9 years now, and nobody talked to me. That's what I noticed. That's what Donnie had actually promised me, and he was right. In Sudbury, everybody knew. That's a town where everybody knows. I'd go into the beer store, and a fella I went to high school with would look at me with that face, that gentle, awful face, and say, "How you making out, Garth?" And I'd have to stand there and decide whether to lie to a man I don't even like. In Chiang Mai, I was just a big, quiet Farang who ordered his food by pointing. That's all I was. And I want you to understand what that was worth to me, because it was worth more than money. Nobody in that city knew I'd lost my mother's house. Nobody knew that I'd signed papers I hadn't read. I could sit at a plastic table with a Leo and be a 55-year-old man with nothing wrong with him. Anyway, the laundry, day 3, my good shirt, I own one, it's blue, I've had it since a cousin's wedding, smelled like the plane and like me. And there's a specific smell a man gets after 20 hours of travel that you can't wash out in a sink. So there's a place on a little swai off Nimon, one of the side ones, half a shop house with a roll-up shutter and 2 washing machines out front and a woman with a sewing machine in the back. Sign in Thai and English, bags of other people's laundry stacked to the ceiling, all tagged with little paper slips, smelled like detergent and hot cotton and the incense from the spirit house out front, which they'd put a strawberry Fanta on. Red Fanta. They'd do that. I still don't fully understand why, but I've stopped asking. Woman behind the counter, 40s, hair up with a pen through it. Weighed my bag, wrote a number, I paid, I left. And I'm about a half a block up the SOI, dodging a motorbike that's come up onto the pavement, because that's just what they do. And I hear somebody yelling behind me. She's running, actually running in flip-flops, with a 20 baht note in her hand. She'd overcharged me, 20 baht. That's 78 cents Canadian, 78 cents. And she'd done the arithmetic again after I'd walked out, and she'd come down the street after me to give it back, and she was out of breath, and she was a bit annoyed about it. Not at me, at herself for getting it wrong. I tried to wave it off. Told her keep it, honestly, it's nothing. She would not have it. She put the note in my hand and closed my fingers over it and gave me this look like I'd insulted her. And then she weighed, hands together, little bow, and went back to her shop. I stood there in the street holding 78 cents. And I know exactly what you're thinking, because I've thought it myself about 4,000 times since. You're thinking, sure, mate, that's the play. That's how it starts. But it wasn't a play. I need you to sit with that, because everything I'm about to tell you falls apart if you don't. She wasn't working me. She never worked me. Not that day, not any day, not once in 9 years. What I thought, standing there, was something much stupider and much worse. I thought, that's more honesty than I got from a licensed financial advisor with a folder. That's it. That's the whole thought. Not love at first sight, not anything like that. Just this dumb little arithmetic in my head. A woman in a laundry chasing me down the street over 78 cents, and a man in an office in Calgary who took $200,000 of mine and never once ran down a street after anybody. Her name's Waraporn. Everyone calls her Juan. I brought my washing back the next week, which is a thing you do when you've got 14 days and you've been there 3 of them, and you've already found a laundry you like. And on day 12, I went down to the guest house desk and asked, all casual, like a man asking about the weather, what a room went for by the month. I told myself I was just curious. I have never in my life been just curious about a number. I want to be honest with you about how a man stays somewhere for 9 years, because it isn't one decision. That's the thing. Everybody thinks there was a moment. There was never a moment. 6,000 baht a month. That's what the room cost. $230 Canadian, in a little walk-up building on a swy behind Nimmen, with a landlady who never once asked me anything, except whether I wanted the fan or the aircon. Fan. I took the fan. Saved 400 baht. And I moved the flight. Just the once, mind. 6 weeks. Because, and this was a real reason, I'm not making it up to look better. My knee had stopped clicking, and I wanted to see if it held. That's it. That's the reason a man changes a flight. I wanted to see if my knee held. Then I moved it again. Then I moved it a third time in November, because November in Sudbury is when your hands start. 11 months, 3 flight changes, and then Air Canada wanted more to move it than the ticket was worth, and I sat there with my thumb over the screen, and I let it die. That's the whole decision. There was no decision. I let a thing expire, which is not the same as choosing, and I've had 9 years to think about the difference, and I still couldn't tell you what it is. So, the laundry. I want to be careful here, because I know what this sounds like. Fella meets a woman in Thailand, fella stays. You've seen 40 of these, and you're already ahead of me. You're already thinking, here we go, here's where she starts. She never started. That's what I need you to hear. In 9 years, Juan has never once asked me for money. Not once. Not for a bill, not for a phone, not for her mother, not for anything. Everything I gave because I offered. Hold that. You'll need it later. But that first year, there wasn't anything to give. That first year, we were just, I don't know what we were. I'd bring my washing in on a Tuesday. Then I started bringing it in on Tuesdays, even when it wasn't much, which is a stupid thing a man does. She had these red plastic stools out front, the ones every shop in Thailand has, and I started sitting on one, which is comical, honestly. I'm 6'3" and about 240, and these stools are built for a woman half my size. And I'd be sat on this thing with my knees up around my ears like a bear on a footrest, drinking cha yen out of a plastic bag with a straw in it. Thai iced tea, orange, sweet as a milkshake, you get it in a bag. I still don't fully understand the bag. Her mother, Somjai, ran the sewing machine in the back. 71 then. Wouldn't speak a word of English to me for about 4 months, and then one day she said, "You big," and went back to her hemming, and that was our relationship for a year. And the daughter, Fawn, 15 at the time, in her school uniform, doing homework on the counter between the till and the bags of other people's shirts. Juan was 44, ran the place with her mother, had done for 11 years. She was married. I found this out early, and she told me herself, and that's important. A fella from Lampong who'd gone to Bangkok in about 2009 to work in a hotel, and just never came back and never sent anything and never filed a thing. So she wasn't divorced, couldn't be really, without finding him, and she didn't want to find him. I asked her once why she didn't just go through the courts. She laughed and said something like, "For what? I want to marry again?" And she looked at me when she said it, and then she looked away, and neither of us said anything. And we sat there on those ridiculous stools and watched a monk go past on the sowai. Anyway, here's what disarmed me, and I've had a long time to think about which specific thing it was. And it wasn't her face, and it wasn't kindness. It was that she said no to me. I tried to pay for a taxi to the Sunday walking street market, and she wouldn't have it. Argued with me on the pavement about 80 baht. 80 baht. $3. She won. I tried to buy Fawn a phone. Her old one was cracked right across, held together with tape, and I've got, well, I had, money sitting in a Canadian account doing nothing, and it seemed like a nice thing. Juan went cold on me. First time I'd seen it. She said in that flat, careful English of hers, "She is not your daughter." And she was a bit hurt, I think, like I'd suggested she couldn't provide. I apologized about 6 times, which is a very Canadian thing to do, and she made me tea and it was fine, but I never forgot it, because a woman working a play does not turn down a phone. I just had 200 grand taken off me by a man in a Tim Hortons with a folder, and I knew what a play looked like now. I knew what it looked like from the inside, which is the only way you ever learn it. And this was not one. That's what I told myself. And I'd like to point out for the record, 9 years on sitting here, I was right. I was right about her. That's the part nobody believes. She asked me once, about a year in, what I'd done in Canada, and I told her all of it. The rigs, the RRSP, my mother's house, Donnie, the folder I didn't read, sitting on the stool with the traffic going by and the smell of the detergent coming out the door. I don't know what I expected. Pity maybe, or that look people gave me in the beer store. She didn't do either. She thought about it for a bit, and then she said, everybody lose money. My father lose everything. 2 time. Rice. And she shrugged. Just shrugged. And I sat there on that little red stool and something in my chest came unclenched that had been clenched since 2015. That's the moment, if you want one. Not the 20 baht. That. Because in Sudbury, I was a man who'd lost everything. It was the main fact about me. It was the first thing anybody thought when they saw me coming. And I could see them thinking it. And I'd started to think it too. And this woman heard the whole thing and shrugged and said, everybody loses money. Do you understand what that's worth? To be ordinary. To be a fella who had a bad run instead of a cautionary tale walking down Elm Street. I'd have paid a lot for that. As it turns out, I did. But not then. In year 1, I paid for nothing but my own Leo and my 6,000 baht a month. And my pension came in, 1,900 Canadian, which was about 50,000 baht at the time. And for the first time since the letter, the arithmetic was on my side. I had more than I needed. Me. The bus driller with the empty RRSP. I stopped booking flights. And I want to say plainly, that was the best year of my life. Not the happiest, maybe, but the best. Year 2, I moved into the room above the shop. There's a room up there, up a concrete stair round the back, and it had been full of boxes and a broken washing machine since about 2012. And I said, look, I'll clear that out, and I'll fix your machine while I'm at it, and I'll pay you what I'm paying the landlady. 4,000, Juan said. Not 6. I said 6. She said 4. We settled on 4. That's how every negotiation with that woman has ever gone. And here's the part one's never been able to explain properly to anyone from home. I fixed the machine. Bearing had gone, and the drum was scraping, and I pulled it apart on the concrete out back with a Leo going warm beside me, and the traffic on the Soi Ai, and some old fella across the way, watching me the whole time without saying a word. Took me 2 days. Cost about 800 baht in parts. And when it spun up, Juan came out and put her hands on it like it was a horse. That's the drug. Right there. Not her. That. 26 years I was a man who fixed things. And then I was a man sitting at a kitchen table in Sudbury. And then I was a man on a concrete step with grease up to his elbows and a woman looking at him like he'd done something. I did the shutter next. Then the wiring, which was... I'm not going to describe the wiring. Some of you have been to Thailand. You know what the wiring is. Rewired the whole shop for about 6,000 baht in my own labor, and Samjai made me cow soy for a week straight. That's the northern curry noodle, the coconut one with the crispy noodles on top. Best food on earth. I'd eat it at a funeral. That was 2018 into 2019. Good years. I was 50, 51. Then COVID. I have to talk about COVID because people always ask why I didn't leave in 2020. And the answer is the borders shut and then I couldn't and then I didn't want to. Chiang Mai went quiet in a way I've never seen a city go quiet. Nimen with nothing on it. The tourist money just stopped like somebody turned a tap. Juan's shop lived off guest houses and long-stay Farangs and students, and all 3 of those things vanished in about 10 days. Her takings went to maybe 40%. She let the one girl she employed go and cried about it and then never mentioned it again. And me, my pension came in every month, 1,900 Canadian, into the same account it always went into from a company in Calgary that had nothing to do with any of this. And the baht went a bit soft against the dollar that year, so I was actually up. I was in the middle of a global catastrophe, slightly ahead, so I paid the rent on the shop and the electric, and I bought the food, and I'd go down to the rimping, and come back with bags of everything. And Somjai would go through it item by item, tutting. Nobody asked me to. I want that on the record. Nobody asked. I offered, and Juan said no, and I said yes, and we went round 3 times, and then she stopped saying no. And that's the last time she ever said no to me about money, and I didn't notice it at the time, and I've thought about it every day since. Because that's the point where the shape of it changed. That's the load transferring. If you've ever watched a rig take weight on a line, you know exactly what I mean. Nothing looks different. Nothing moves. But everything the tension goes through is different now. 18 months I carried that household. About 15,000 baht a month, all in, so call it 580 Canadian. Over 18 months, roughly 270,000 baht, 10.5 grand. And I would do it again tomorrow. I want to be extremely clear about that. She'd have lost the shop. Her mother was 74. There was no version of me sitting upstairs with a full bank account watching that happen. But I'd come out here with $24,000 in savings, and I came out of COVID with about 18. I didn't do that math at the time. Why would you? You do the month, not the decade. Then 2022, Somjai's foot. She's had the diabetes for years, I knew that. Everybody knew that. She took the pills when she remembered and ate sticky rice like it was a competitive event. And there was a sore on her foot that wasn't healing. And she'd been hiding it, wrapping it in a cloth and hiding it from her own daughter because she didn't want to be trouble. That's krengjai. People throw that word around. It means not wanting to burden. It means an old woman with a rotting foot sitting in the back of a laundry hemming trousers and saying nothing. Because saying something costs somebody else. By the time Juan saw it, it was bad. Government hospital would have done it eventually. But the wait, and I'd been reading about the wait, and there's a word they use, debridement, and there's another word they use, and the other word is amputation. So I said we go private. Juan started to say something, and I put my hand up, which is not something I do, and I said, Juan, I've got it. Shrip hat. That's the private wing at Swan Dock. 40,000 baht for the surgery and the stay and the follow-up, give or take. 1,500 Canadian. She saved the foot, lost the toe, she still got the foot. And when they told us Juan sat down in that plastic hospital chair with the fluorescent light on her, and she cried. And I have never been so certain of anything in my life as I was, that those tears were real, and I have never in my life felt as good as I felt in that hallway. That's the confession. That's the actual confession, and it's got nothing to do with money. I liked it. I liked being the man who could fix it. 26 years of tightening bolts and then a folder full of paper I couldn't touch. And here was a thing that was broken, and I put my hand on it, and it got better. $1,500 to feel like myself again. Cheapest thing I've ever bought. That's what I told myself. And you know what? Sitting here, I'm not even sure I was wrong. That's the trouble. 18,000 became about 16 and a half. And I remember looking at that number and thinking, well, I'd have spent more than that on 18 months of rent in Sudbury. Which is true. It's completely true. I've checked. It's true. That's the sentence. That's the one that got me. Not she said she loved me. Not she needed the money. It's cheaper than being home. And the thing about a slow leak is you never find it by looking. You find it when you go to fill the tank and it's empty and you can't remember the last time you looked. Fawn came home in the spring of 2023 with her university acceptance. Chiang Mai University, Business English. She put the letter on the counter, between the till and the laundry bags, and Somjai weighed at it like it was a monk. And Juan didn't say one word to me about the fees. Not one word. Not a hint. She never even said the number out loud. I went and found it out myself. 90,000 baht a year. That's what I found out, sitting on the stool with my phone, squinting at a university fee schedule I had to run through a translator twice. Business English, 4 years. 90,000 a year in fees, near enough, plus the books and the laptop and the bus and the rest of it. Call it 110 all in, 4,200 Canadian a year roughly. And I did what I always did. I offered. Juan said no. She said it once, quietly, and she said, not your daughter. Same words she'd used about the phone, 6 years before. She remembered saying it. So did I. And this time I said, no, she's not. And then I said, and I'd thought about this. I'd sat upstairs with the fan going and thought about it for 2 nights. I said, but I've got money doing nothing, and she's got brains doing nothing, and one of those is a waste. Juan looked at me for a long time, and then she went inside and pretended to sort the tickets. She never said yes. I want you to understand that. She has never in her life said yes to me about money. She just stopped saying no, and I paid the fees at the university office myself. In cash, at a window, with a Thai lad behind me sighing because I'm slow with the forms. Fawn called me Uncle Garth. Loon Garth. For years. And then one day in her second year, she came in off the bus and dropped her bag on the counter and said, Papa, I'm hungry. Is there cow soy? Just like that. Didn't even look up. And I went out the back and stood by the machines for a minute. You can put whatever price on that you want. I've done the arithmetic since. Believe me, I've done it to death. But that afternoon it was free. Then the house. Lampun. About 40 minutes south, out past the fields, where Somjai's family have a place. Wooden, up on stilts, been there since the 60s. Juan's brother lives there with his wife and the kids, and Somjai went back there after the foot. Monsoon in 2023 took half the roof. Not dramatically, no tree through it, just the sheeting had gone soft years ago, and nobody had the money, and everybody knew, and nobody said. Kringjai again. It's always Kringjai. Nobody in that family will ever tell you they need something. They will just quietly sit under a leaking roof for 4 years. Juan mentioned it once to her mother, in Thai, not to me, and I understood about a third of it, and I understood enough. 180,000 baht. Materials, proper sheeting, new purlins, the lot. 6,800 Canadian. And I'll be straight with you. I hated writing that number more than I've hated any number in this story. And it's not even the biggest one. Because it wasn't a hospital. Nobody was dying. It was a roof. And I'm a man who fixes roofs. And I wanted to fix the roof, not buy it. So I did both, which is the stupidest, most Canadian thing I have ever done. 55 years old. May in Lampun, which is 38 degrees and no shade, and I'm up on a roof with Juan's brother and 2 of his cousins and a nephew who's about 19 and can carry twice what I can. Cutting sheeting, setting screws, drinking water out of one of those big cooler jugs with the ice going in the bottom. My knee was gone by the second day, hands shaking by the third. Happiest I have been since 2014. I want to be honest about something here because there's no point doing this if I'm not. There was a moment up on that roof, sitting on the ridge with a rag round my neck, looking out over the rice and the phone lines and the little gold roof of the Watt down the road. And I thought, this is my family now. That thought is the most expensive thought I have ever had. It cost me more than the fun, and I don't fully regret it, which is the part that keeps me up. Now, the visa. I've been putting this off in the telling the same way I put it off in the living, and you might have noticed. Here's the thing, I'm on a retirement extension. To get that in Thailand, you need to be over 50, which I am, and then you need one of 2 things. 800,000 baht in a Thai bank, seasoned, sat there for months and not touched. 30,000 Canadian, or you need a verified monthly income of 65,000 baht. My pension is 1,900 Canadian a month. That's about 48,000 baht. 48. They want 65. And I don't have 800,000 in a bank because 800,000 is basically everything I've got left, and it has to sit there untouched forever, and I've been spending it on a toe and a roof and a girl's tuition. So I use an agent. Everybody knows. Every Farang in this country knows. There's an office, and there's a fella, and you give him 25, 30, 35,000 baht a year, 1,000 to 1,300 Canadian, and your extension comes back stamped and correct, and you don't ask how. Some years it's cheaper. Some years there's a crackdown and it's more. Once it was 50, and you sit in a plastic chair in an office off the superhighway, and a man you've never met takes your passport into a back room, and you sit there, and there's a fan going and a little shrine on the shelf with a Fanta on it, and you look at the wall. I lost my retirement to paperwork I didn't read. Now I've got my whole life in this country hanging on paperwork I'm not allowed to read. That's not irony. Irony's a fancy word. That's just what happened, and I know some of you are already typing. Just marry her, Garth. Marriage extension. Only need 400,000 in the bank or 40,000 a month income, and 48 is more than 40. It'd solve it. I know. I've known for years. She's still married. That fella from Lampang who went to Bangkok in 2009. Never came back, never sent a bot, never filed a thing. Juan cannot divorce a man she can't produce. There's a process. Desertion, publication, the courts, and it costs money and years and a lawyer, and it means finding him or proving you couldn't. And every time we've started down it, something's come up. The foot, the roof, the fees. Something's always come up. And I have thought at 3 a.m. with the fan going. I've thought, has something always come up on purpose? And then I lie there hating myself for thinking it, because in 9 years, that woman has never asked me for one bat. And I know that, and I've told you that 6 times now, and I'll tell you again. But the thought comes. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't. So here's where I stood in the autumn of 2025. 56 years old, no marriage, no property, can't own the land, can't own the shop. My name isn't on one single document in this country except a rental agreement and a bank book. 9 years of paying for a family, 0 claim on anything. And then my nephew messaged me from Sudbury. My sister Carol was in the hospital, something with her heart, and I opened my laptop to price a flight home. I want to tell you about the afternoon, because it's the only part of this that's actually a scene. The rest is 9 years of Tuesdays. It was a Wednesday, actually. October. Late in the rains, one of those afternoons where it's going to come down, but it hasn't yet, and the whole city sits under it, holding its breath. I was on the stool out front, Cheyenne, the laptop on a plastic table Juan uses for folding. Toronto to Chiang Mai, return. I looked at the flight first because that's the easy number. That's the number a man can handle. 52,000 baht, roughly, at that time of year. 2,000 Canadian, and I sat back and I thought, well, that's fine. That's doable. Then I opened my bank. 9,000 and change. I want to be precise because precision is the whole point of what happened to me that afternoon. 9,140 Canadian dollars in an account in Sudbury, Ontario that had 24,000 in it when I got on a plane in March of 2017. And I looked at that number and nothing happened. Honestly, nothing. I looked at it the way you'd look at a gauge. 9,000. Okay, because I'd known. Somewhere in me I'd known for a couple of years. The way you know a bearing's going before it goes. You hear it. You don't listen, but you hear it. So then I did the thing I hadn't done in 9 years. I opened the calculator. Not the flight, the life, the actual life at the other end of the flight. Here's what I put in. $1,900 a month. That's my pension. That's it. That's the whole tap. There's nothing else coming and nothing else ever will. Rent in Sudbury. I looked. Not a house. A 1-bedroom, and I mean a rough one. And it's $1,500 a month now. Sudbury, Ontario, where you could buy a bungalow for nothing when I was young. That's the whole pension. That's it. That's rent. And then heat, which in Sudbury from November to April is not optional, and hydro, and food, and I'm sitting there with the calculator app on a plastic table in Thailand, and the number I'm looking at is negative. It's a negative number. My life in my own country, on the pension I earned in my own country, is a negative number. And the other column, the Chiang Mai column, is 4,000 baht rent and food from the market, and my beer, and it's about half my income, and I've got a woman and a girl who calls me Papa, and a roof I put on with my own hands. Then the health card. I want to explain this bit for the Canadians watching, because the rest of you will think it doesn't matter. It matters more than the money. I've been out of the country 9 years. My OHIP's long gone. Provincial health coverage. To get it back, you have to be physically resident in Ontario for 3 months. 3 months with no coverage, no doctor, nothing, paying rent I can't pay, in a city where I know 4 people and every one of them watched me lose everything? 3 months of nothing. That's what going home costs. Not a plane ticket. 3 months of standing on the ice with no card in your wallet and a knee that doesn't work. And I ran the numbers on that, and I ran them again, and I got up and I got another chai yin, and a bike went past with a whole family on it. Mom, dad, 2 kids, nobody wearing a helmet, and the rain started, and I sat back down. And then the last one, the one that closed it. If I go, I can't come back, because my staying here works on an agent, and the agent works because I'm inside. My extension is a thing that gets renewed, quietly, by a man in an office off the superhighway. It's a thing with momentum. It only exists as long as it keeps existing. If I fly to Canada at 57, with $9,000 and no health card and no income the Thai government recognizes, and then I try to come back and start it again from the outside, with no 800,000 in a bank, no 65,000 a month, nothing. I don't come back. That's it. That's the answer. I don't come back. I ran it a 3rd time. I want you to know that. Like a man checking a torque reading 3 times because the number's wrong and it can't be wrong. The number didn't move. And here's what I finally understood. Sitting there with a plastic cup sweating on a plastic table and the rain coming off the shop awning in a sheet. There's nobody to blame. That's the thing. There's no villain in this. I kept waiting for one. My whole way through, some part of me was almost hoping I'd find one. Because a villain is a thing you can hit. A villain is a bolt. I sat there and I went looking for one, honest to God. Was it Juan? No. Was it Samjai's foot? No, that was a toe. That was worth it. Was it Fawn? Absolutely not. The roof? COVID? Was it Donnie? No. Donnie was 2015. Donnie took my money. This took my exit, and Donnie wasn't anywhere near it. I did this. I did it in about 110 increments, each one of which I would defend to you individually right now, and not one of which I can defend altogether. Juan came out about 6 and found me sitting there in the dark. And I told her, I said, I can't go home. Not for a visit. Not ever, probably. I've done the numbers. She didn't understand at first. She thought I meant Carol, my sister. She thought I meant I couldn't afford the flight, and she started saying something about the shop's savings, and I had to stop her. And that's when she understood, and I watched her understand it. And she went very still. And she said, you say it is because of me. Not angry, quiet, like she'd been waiting 9 years for that sentence, and here it finally was. And I said no. And I meant it. I still mean it. And she stood there in the doorway with the machines going behind her, and she said, I never ask you. 1 baht, 9 year. And I said, I know. That's the whole confrontation. That's it. That's what 9 years builds up to. 2 people saying true things at each other in a doorway, and both of them right, and it changes absolutely nothing. She went back inside. I heard her start the spin cycle. Carol got better, by the way. Stents. She's fine. She's back at work. I never bought the ticket. I never told her why. I told her the flights were dear. She said, oh, Garth, no worries, next year. Yeah. No, next year. So that's where I am. That's the whole thing. You're up to date. It's 2026. I'm 57. I'm sitting on a red plastic stool outside a laundry on a soy off Niman with my knees up round my ears. And the machines are going behind me. And in about 10 minutes, the woman who owns the shop is going to bring me out a chia I didn't ask for and put it on the table without saying anything. Because that's what she does at 4 o'clock. Juan's still here. That's the part nobody believes. One read the comments on other fellas' stories. I know what half of you are already typing. She's going to leave when the money's gone, Garth. Wait for it, Garth. The money's basically gone. She's still here. She's 53 now. Her hair's mostly gray and she won't dye it, which drives Fawn mad. She still won't let me pay for the taxi. 9 years and there is still a running argument on the pavement outside this shop about 80 baht. And Somyai's still got her foot, missing a toe. 79 sits in the back doing the hemming. Still tells me I'm big, which after 9 years I've decided is affection. Fawn graduated, business English, second-class honors, works for a logistics firm in Bangkok now. 35,000 baht a month, which for a girl from a laundry in Chiang Mai is, well, that's a real job. That's a life. And every month she sends money home. That's what they do. That's what a Thai daughter does, and no one had to teach her, and she's been doing it since her second paycheck. And some of that money, I know this, I've never said it out loud to anyone, I'm saying it now to a camera and a lot of strangers. Some of that money pays my visa agent, 30,000 baht a year, a girl I put through university, paying to keep me in the country. I can't tell you what that feels like. I'll try. It feels like being helped off a rig you used to run. So let's do the books. Properly. You've earned it. You've sat through all this. Money. I came with 24,000. I've got about 8.5 left, plus 9 years of pension, most of which went into this SOA, and into that shop, and into a roof in Lampung, and into a girl's tuition. Call it $15,500 of savings gone, and I'd spend most of it again. I want to be clear. Most of it. Not all. I'd think harder about 18 months of COVID rent, if you want the honest answer, and I hate myself a bit for saying that. Time. 9 years, which I don't want back. That's the trouble with the accounting, see? The ledger doesn't balance because half the things in the loss column were the best things that ever happened to me. Dignity. I'm 57 years old, and my residency in this country depends on a man in an office off the superhighway whose surname I do not know, and it's paid for, partly by a 23-year-old. Standing, I own nothing. Not the shop, not the land, not the room I sleep in. My name is on a rental agreement and a bank book, and that's it. If Juan drops dead tomorrow, I have no claim on a single thing in this country, and no visa, and no way home. We're still not married. She's still married to a fella in Bangkok nobody's seen since 2009. We started the divorce process last year properly, with a lawyer. It'll take a while. Something might come up. And home. Carol, my sister. She'd had the stents, and she's fine, and I've never told her. There was a wedding. My nephew, the one who messaged me. I saw the photos on Facebook at 2 in the morning on a phone. My mother's grave. Nobody's put anything on it since 2016. I didn't lose those. That's the thing I need you to get. Nobody took them off me. I set them down, one at a time, over 9 years, and every single time I set one down, it seemed like the reasonable thing to do. So, wisdom. That's what you came for, is it? Here's mine, and it's not much. And it took 9 years and everything I had. Nobody scammed me. That's it. That's the whole lesson, and it's the one nobody wants. Juan never lied to me, never asked me, never took a baht I didn't put in her hand. If you sit through this and you walk away thinking she got me, you've learned nothing, and you'll be the next one. And you'll be worse off than me, because at least I like the woman who cost me my life. I lost my retirement to a document I didn't read. I lost my way home to 9 years of small kindnesses that I thought of myself. One of those was somebody else's doing. The other one was mine. And the second one cost more. They tell you the trap in this country is a woman. It isn't. The trap is comfort. Comfort is a slow leak. You don't hear a slow leak. You find it when you go to fill the tank and it's empty, and you can't remember the last time you looked. Look at the tank. That's all I've got. Every year on a set day, sit down with a calculator and look at the tank. And don't look at what a thing costs. Look at what it costs you to leave. Because there's a number where you stop being a man who's staying and start being a man who can't go. And nobody rings a bell when you cross it. Right, she's coming out with the tea. That'll be it. Welcome back. And thank you for sitting with Garth's story. I want to close by naming what actually happened to him, because it's easy to miss. Garth Wilkie was never defrauded in Thailand. Not once. Every baht he spent, he chose to spend, and most of it went to people who genuinely loved him and never asked. That's not the exception to the cautionary tale. That is the cautionary tale. What got him is a thing the comment sections don't have a word for. He was anchored, incrementally, kindly, by decisions that were each individually generous and collectively irreversible. So if you're watching this and you're thinking about it, 4 things. 1. A return ticket is not a plan. Set a floor, a hard number in your home currency that you will not go below ever, for anybody's mother, anybody's roof, anybody's tuition. And write it down before you land, because you will not be able to write it down after. 2. Do the Visa arithmetic in year 1, not year 7. 800,000 bought in the bank, or 65,000 a month verified. If you can't meet it honestly, you are not retired in Thailand. You are renting your residency from strangers, annually, forever. 3. 9 years of paying for a family gives you no legal standing whatsoever. Not the shop, not the land, not the house you helped build. If you aren't married, you have nothing. And if you can't be married, find out why, early. 4. Krengjai is real. Nobody in that family ever asked Garth for a thing, and that is precisely why it cost him everything. The absence of a demand is not the absence of a cost. The comments on this video will say she used him. They'll be wrong, and being wrong about it is how the next one gets made, because he'll be watching for a con, and what's coming for him is a Tuesday. Look at your tank. Take care of yourselves out there. This is Thailand.